Thank you. Good morning. Here we are again at another pivotal moment in our history as Black occupational therapy practitioners. Prior to the beginning of any gathering, it has been our custom to pour libations to our ancestors, to call them up so that they can be present with us as we engage in this intellectual process. So, what we will do today is we will pour libations. And when you pour libations, what you do as we pour to each direction, north, east, south, and west, you call up the name of influential people in your lives. I will start by calling up some of the founders of the Black Occupational Therapy Caucus. And then I ask you to think about those individuals in your past, teachers, preachers, moms, dad, aunts, uncles, neighbors who have, and also advisors who have been influential in your lives and who've made an impact in your life. So, starting with the East, I'm going to call up Yvonne Flowers, Bill Lofton, Javan Walker, Agatha Jackson. So as I'm calling, I want you to do the same process. As we pour to the west, of course, we have to call up such luminaries as Dr. Martin Luther King, Bayard Rustin, and of course, my favorite, Gil Scott-Heron. As we pour to the south, think again of those individuals who have been influential in your lives. My Big Ma, my fourth grade teacher, Miss Murray. Now, as we pour to the south, again, think of individuals who have been instrumental in your life. My basketball coach in high school, my advisor. Thank you. Now we will light the candle. And the candle will be lit for the remainder of this program. Is there anyone in the audience who has more than 73 years? Hearing none, I give you permission to begin the conference. Thank you.
Good morning and greetings. Welcome to our third annual National Black Occupational Therapy Caucus and Brothers Black History Month Conference. I am Rakia Kitchens, the president of the National Black Occupational Therapy Caucus, and I'm here to welcome you today. This is an exciting time in the caucus's history. This year, we celebrate 50 years as an organization. 50 years of enduring excellence. With that in mind, our theme for today's conference is embracing excellence. Well, what is excellence? Let me tell you. In the Collins Dictionary, excellence is referred to or defined as the state or quality of being exceptionally good. And that is a quality that each of today's speakers possess. Today, you will hear from occupational therapy practitioners who have demonstrated excellence in clinical practice, in academia, and in professional leadership. And we hope that each of you attending today will learn something that will be inspired by the excellence that will be exemplified. So, again, I welcome you and I hope that you leave today enjoying today's conference and feeling inspired. Now I will turn it over to Mr. Donald Howard.
Thank you, Dr. Kitchens, and good morning, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure and an opportunity to be before you to celebrate the third annual Black History Month program. My name is Donald Howard. I serve as president for BROTHAS, and I'm so glad and thankful for this year's committee for their efforts in assembling the presenters and their efforts in putting together this wonderful program that we're all going to be a part of. We are all a part of a historical moment this year, as Dr. Kitchens mentioned, the celebration of NBOTC for 50 years. And being that I am a son of Howard University also is celebrating 50 years this year, and there will be more to come regarding that. But for this moment, we are celebrating, showcasing excellence this day, and my heart is just filled with what's about to come forward. So I hope and pray that you receive something today that you're able to put in your bag of nuggets and to be able to share with those within your circle of reach. Again, thank you and have a great day today. I'll, at this time, pass it on to Andre Johnson.
Thank you, Donald. Welcome, everyone. My name is Andre Johnson, and I will be your MC for today's event. Our first speaker is going to be Dr. Christopher Gaskins. Dr. Gaskins has 12 years of experience working as an occupational therapist. Dr. Gaskins earned his BS in exercise science from the University of South Carolina, his MS in OT from Howard University, and his PhD in neuroscience and cognitive science from the University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Gaskins developed a passion for neurorehabilitation while working at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center from 2011 to 2017. During this time, he also co-founded Go Therapy, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing rehabilitation access in West Africa. He spearheaded Go Therapy's efforts to develop the stroke community reintegration program, SCRIP, in Douala, Ghana. His neuroscience research examined cognitive motor performance of individuals learning to use rehabilitation devices such as upper limb prostheses. When considering the potential impact of his research, he noticed there was a lack of engagement from academic researchers and clinicians. To fill the gap, he started his own neurorehabilitation company, NeuroSuite, while still a PhD student, so he could master how to be a clinician researcher. His company, NeuroSuite, serves clients with neurological conditions. Under his direction, NeuroSuite offers a novel automated home exercise program that are electronically delivered to clients, a video submission program to analyze client performance, use of cutting-edge technology, telerehabilitation, and more to challenge the traditional way therapists provide care. In addition to his NeuroSuite, Dr. Gaskins is an adjunct professor at Howard University and Bowie State University, and guest lectured at Kean University, the University of North Carolina, Pembroke, and Boston University. Dr. Gaskins has been featured on Sabo's No Plateau podcast, the show Road to Better podcast, and the OT Potential podcast. His company, NeuroSuite, is the recipient of the PayPal and Facebook grants for small Black businesses. He is a recipient of the OT Standing for Research, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Stride Grant. He is also a member of the Repro Rehab Program, an NIH-sponsored educational program that trains rehabilitation researchers in basic data science skills. He is a proud husband and girl dad. He enjoys biking, cooking, learning code, listening to music, and spending time outdoors. At the end of his presentation, we will have a Q&A. So please provide your questions inside the chat. With that, I provide you Dr. Christopher Gaskins.
Great, thank you for that great introduction. I'm honored to be here today. All right, you should be able to see my screen.
Christopher, we can see it, perfect.
Great. So in embracing excellence, I think the importance of being able to really capture excellence and also in light of History Month is to show you a little bit of connection, how Black history from where I came from and how that connects to me and how that's empowered me in my career. So I grew up in a small town called Lake City, a southern boy from South Carolina. And this is definitely a small, quiet place, but it has a significant history of excellence, in particular Black history. So many of you may not know, but Fraser Baker was the first Black postmaster in South Carolina, or in Lake City. But unfortunately, in 1980, I believe 1898, only 1 year after he earned the position of being a Black postmaster, unfortunately, he was murdered by the KKK, and his family, were traumatized. House was burned down, and also his little girl was also passed away. And here is a picture of his family. Now, the significance of this is that the house and the postmaster, or the post office, the land, again, his house and the post office was burnt down, but from that same land came the church that I grew up in. And the power of this church is that Reverend Joseph A. Delane was our pastor, but he was also a civil rights activist that was very instrumental in the Briggs versus Elliott case. And if you're not familiar, this was the first case to really challenge segregated schools in the 20th century in the US. And this spearheaded the Brown versus Board of Education. And so this impetus for a change in America really started not just like in my little hometown or area of South Carolina, but literally in the same church that I got a lot of my upbringing and culture from. But again, unfortunately, during this tumultuous time, our church, again, we're still on the land of Fraser Baker, the first Black postmaster in our hometown. Our church was burnt down by the KKK. But when thinking about a note of perseverance, even though the church was burnt down, the Holy Bible that was in the preacher's pulpit survived, which is always a very inspiring story. So when we think of that, and we see the perseverance of this culture and our people, and here is my church today. And the reason why I'm really harping on that is because my community and my church was influential in my upbringing. And again, when we connecting in light of Black History Month, connecting that culture and that past of that church, and how that pours through me, that allows me to be able to persevere and really embrace excellence. And it's funny because when I think back to my days growing up in church, every year we had our MLK Day and our MLK service. And, the little kids, we always had to participate. And this was the quote from Martin Luther King that I always had to recite. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving, keep pushing forward. And that's what I've done throughout my career. Influenced by my parents, my mom being an English teacher and my dad being in biology, I always had a knack for science and writing. But I really began to love science a little bit more. And that led to me getting my BS in exercise science from the University of South Carolina, as mentioned earlier. And then also led to my great time at Howard University in achieving an occupational therapy degree there. After I left Howard, or graduate from Howard, I worked from 2011 to 2017 at Walter Reed, which really was my dream job, with my father being a Vietnam veteran. And during my time at Walter Reed, I really developed a niche in neurorehabilitation. And pictured here is one of my dear patients that really affected my life in more ways you can imagine. But we're working on various things such as, gardening, virtual reality to work on visual scanning and reaction time, and working on community reintegration. I think we're going to the Cheesecake Factory here. So my time at Walter Reed was definitely influential. And in addition to that, during my time at Walter Reed, along with Robin Baker, we formed Go Therapy, which is a nonprofit that's dedicated to improving rehabilitation access in Africa. So what we see here is pictures from our experience back in 2017 when we worked at in Cape Coast at the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, working with various patients and also trained the staff on occupational therapy and broad rehabilitation. Now, during my experiences at Walter Reed and even with Go Therapy, we did a lot of good and we definitely embraced excellence. But one thing I'll note throughout the theme of my talk is that it's important to embrace excellence, but it's also important to continue to chase it. So with that being said, I wasn't always satisfied with the level of care that I provided my patients. I always thought I could do better to better drive their outcomes and really improve their functional ability and their quality of life. So that led me to pursue a PhD in neuroscience and cognitive science, and I just obtained that PhD this past November 2023. And with that, my time there, my work really focused on understanding how groups of neurons communicate, how groups of thousands of neurons or even tens of thousands of neurons communicate. And when we're engaged in a task that is challenging, maybe like learning to use a prosthetic or maybe learning how to put on a shirt, how do those neurons communicate? How do those neurons essentially oscillate in response to that mental effort? That is what I measured using electroencephalography, which you see here, to really be able to capture what we call that mental effort. But even more so, I was really interested in looking at prosthetic devices. When we think about kind of like an old school, older device, like a body power upper limb prosthetic, as we see here, that operates using a pulley system, mechanical system, and a little bit more technologically advanced device that uses a myoelectric system that's able to read the input of your muscles, and it is able to then be able to create movement of the prosthetic hand based upon that activity of your muscles. We wanted to see, okay, well, how does mental effort change in response to learning to use these different types of devices? So I assessed that from the brain using electroencephalography to performance to actually looking at the quality of movement using the study of kinematics, all the way down to your perception of mental effort using surveys. And what we see here are individuals completing the box and blocks assessment using the body power and the myoelectric device. So I'll spare you my entire dissertation discussion, but the major finding was that we found that there were similar levels of performance between these prosthetic types, but we noticed that higher levels of cognitive effort was required for the myoelectric devices. Now, this is very significant because one, if we think about cost effectiveness, the body power device may cost $7,000, $10,000. My electric device might cost 3, 4, 5 times that. So again, we have to ask ourselves, really, what's the value in return on investment for our client if they have to pay a lot more money for a device that may yield similar performances? It might be more cosmetically appealing, but also requires more cognitive effort. What's the large implication there? Additionally, for my dissertation, I was able to create a novel motor assessment that really added value to the traditional way that we assess motor function, and that we, on top of the motor task, we now couple it with context. So instead of a patient just putting books on the bookshelf, now you're putting books on the bookshelf, but now you have to alphabetize it because that's what your significant other would like for you to do. Or now maybe instead of simply pouring water into a cup, now imagine that you're a barista and you need to pour a half cup of milk and a little bit of espresso in your cup to prepare your client's favorite latte. We also did tasks such as medication management and meal preparation. And by doing this, we embrace excellence, but we also, to some degree, chase excellence because we're trying to push the paradigm in the way that we assess motor function and to be more inclusive in encompassing cognitive challenges that we experience every day when we engage in these different activities. In addition to that, we also wanted to see, okay, if we have a gold standard that assesses mental effort in a survey called an TLX, this is the gold standard. We want to see, could we develop something that could be even better, even more informative to inform mental effort when learning to use new types of devices? So we developed the prosthesis orthosis load index. And here are the various dimensions. And now when we looked at the ability of these assessments to be able to track changes in the mental workload as people engage in training, we see here that the various dimensions of the poly, so 5 out of 6 dimensions, were sensitive in detecting changes in mental workload compared to only 3 from the gold standard. So that's very promising work. And again, in line with chasing excellence. In addition to that, some work I've been also fortunate to do is be able to examine through a research study the differences in academic and professional performance and experience of Black occupational therapists who attended an HBCU or non-HBCU. And I've actually have received funding from AOTF to be able to complete this research. And I'll be talking about the research a little bit at the conference this year with the expectation to have a published paper later on in the year. And lastly, another way that I've been able to really embrace excellence is by trying to be an innovator. And essentially, through my company called NeuroSuite, we have been able to provide quality occupational therapy that really targets the individuals that are living with neurological conditions, stroke, brain injury, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, you name it. But we pride ourselves in that we specialize in this area where we don't come from a general approach. We come from a very firm neuroscience background with a strong functional component that is meaningful to the client and their family, while also an appropriate integrating technology to be able to drive improvement. But with that, and with the culmination of my PhD, I'm happy to announce that we're now beginning to expand our efforts throughout this company, and that while we will continue to be able to treat patients, now we're beginning to build out more of a research arm and consultation arm so that we can be able to really attack problematic challenges within healthcare, neuroscience, and neurorehabilitation. Since I've graduated, or literally a couple of days after I complete my dissertation, I joined a company called Cognosante, and this is my full-time job, where things are coming full circle for me in that the interest in the military started with my father being a Vietnam veteran. I worked as an occupational therapist at Walter Reed for several years. And then now with Cognosante, I'm able to provide consultation formally as a military health quantitative subject matter expert, in which essentially I'm providing consultation and expertise to be able to help prop up and stand up a new brain injury program. So with that being said, as I continue to push forward, I hope to be able to continue to transform health by assessing the efficacy of novel health programs and technology. So utilize the skills I gained throughout my PhD and as an occupational therapist to really be able to look at various health programs and technology and be able to determine the efficacy and the impact that it can make on our patients and our population. So with that being said, again, in context of Black History Month, I've been able to show how the past of my hometown and really how it's been inextricably linked to how I've been raised and the beliefs that I've developed within my life and how that has propelled me forward to continue to embrace excellence in my various endeavors. And one thing I would encourage everyone to really consider is that be aware of excellence all around you. I think I was not always aware of this. Even the entrepreneurial spirit, I would even say. Growing up down south, I think I took certain things for granted, but now that I look back, my cousin a few blocks away owned an auto shop. My father was a entrepreneur and that he owned a funeral home. The gentleman up the street, his father owned like a tax office. So greatness and entrepreneurship and just greatness and innovation and just the drive to really succeed is all around us. But sometimes we just have to really stop and take notice of it and then allow that to motivate us to do more. So in closure, again, I challenge you to not just embrace excellence but make sure you continue to chase it because it is a never-ending chase as we all strive to make a difference in the world. And with that being said, I thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Dr. Gaskins, for that outstanding presentation. With that, please, everyone, if you have any questions for Dr. Gaskins, please drop it in the chat. We're going to have a few minutes for a Q&A right now. So Dr. Gaskins, there is actually a first question in here. Is your HIT assessment available for use? And how long does it take to administer? And where can it be found?
Yeah, great question. So it's not ready for use just yet. To be able to release an assessment of that sort, it needs to go through stringent standardization and validation. So presenting the work as a part of my dissertation was the very first step. But I met with my advisor a couple of days ago, and we are working on getting papers published on it. But we tested the HIT in a population of what we say able-bodied people or people with intact limbs that learn to use what we call a bypass prosthetic. And that's informative, but now this assessment needs to be tested in the actual prosthetic population, in the actual amputee population. And then once that step is done, and then it's been standardized and validated, then yes, then we can move forward with possible production of the assessment at large. As far as how long the assessment takes, it's split into two parts. The first part is more so a motor piece in which individuals focus on grasping larger objects that require like a spherical grip or like a cylindrical grip, like a can or a ball, and smaller items that require precision grips, like grabbing like a toothbrush or pencil. And also it tests out how you do grabbing items at chest level and then also up above your head. Because you think about how much activities we engage in above our head, but how many assessments do you see that actually assess that? And then the second part is a cognitive part, which I discussed during the talk. The first part is pretty short. It takes roughly 15 minutes. And the cognitive piece takes a little bit longer, roughly 25 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Gaskins. The second question that we have, at NeuroSuite, do you use a VR in combination with electroencephalopathy?
Yeah. So we've used VR in a limited capacity. I've had some challenges with using VR in the setting because I work with clients that have spasticity, and it's difficult, one, to be able to grab the controllers and utilize. And now, as we see with the Apple product, the Apple Vision, we're seeing that now people are able to use VR necessarily without using your hands. But I found that to be a major barrier. So I found more application with VR in the mental health utility, but I haven't had like a lot of patients that had anxiety or depression as like a primary goal, so that I could use it in that way. As far as EEG, I have not, mainly due to it being cost prohibitive. It's very expensive, maybe $30,000 for like the EEG that I pictured during my talk. However, there is a much more economical product, and I can't remember what it's called at the moment, but it only uses like 4 or 5 electrodes. So that could be promising for use in clinical in the clinical aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Gaskins. All right, I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions here. There's a question from a current OTD student at Howard and fellow South Carolinian. She'd like to know and ask, how have you incorporated cultural sensitivity in your novel assessment?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one thing I can just say for my dissertation is just being inclusive of various racial backgrounds. So just a little bit of history, like even using EEG, even when we think about the EEG cap, I mean, there's bias in that there's a Euro cut and then there's an Asian cut, for example, and that how the cap is designed. So you can just see that bias there. Also, on top of that, historically, EEG research has not included African Americans a lot due to the texture of our hair. And because of the texture of our hair, that can make it a little bit more challenging to be able to conduct the proper signal of the brain. So to challenge racial diversity and to challenge inclusivity and really push for it, in my research, I think I had roughly 30 or 40% of minorities, with probably 20% of those being African Americans. And I actually took my time and figured out how to get a good EEG signal with someone that had their hair out or maybe had their hair in braids. In addition into that, there is more research that's coming out that's looking at creating new EEG caps that are more sensitive to detecting brain signal for people with different types of hair. So I would say that's probably the biggest way that I've tried to incorporate inclusivity in my work.
Thank you, Dr. Gaskins. Okay. With that, Dr. Gaskins, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your work with us. We're now going to move into the academic realm, and I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Candace Young.
Hello, everybody. All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, Candace.
All right, thanks.
All right, so Candace Young. Candace Young is a dedicated occupational therapy practitioner with a distinguished 17-year career, primarily focusing on the well-being of individuals age 65 and older and working with patients with lymphedema in inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation setting. Her passion for education blossomed during her tenure as a clinical instructor and mentor for OTA clinical students from 2 local universities. This transformative experience occurred during her pursuit of her master's degree in healthcare administration with a specialization in gerontology. Currently, she serves as a program director for an OTA program at a local university, a role that allows her to channel her enthusiasm for teaching, mentoring, and providing exceptional knowledge to students and treatment to patients alike. The commitment to excellence led her to pursue a postmaster as an education specialist. Concurrently with her ongoing doctoral studies at the University of West Florida in curriculum and instruction and administrative studies. Ms. Young has been recognized in leadership roles at her current employment, ACOT, ACOLS, and community. Her experiences have fueled a passion for contributing to published and unpublished articles in local sectors. Additionally, she's advocated for community and family health, sharing her insights at various conferences. Beyond her professional pursuits, she is happily married and blessed with 3 vibrant and active children. 2 wonderful daughters, aged 17 and 13, and an energetic 4.5-year-old son. Balancing the demands of a busy schedule can be challenging, but she finds immense joy in spending quality time with her family. Ms. Young states, "I am deeply grateful for the opportunities that have shaped my journey thus far, and I look forward to the continued growth and contributions in occupational therapy." With that, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Candace Young.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen if I'm allowed to. Okay. May I share my screen, please? I think it's disabled. There we go. Thanks. All right, thank you so much for having me today. It is such a pleasure to be amongst everyone in this room full of Black excellence and everybody, exceeding and excelling in your academic pursuits and also your leadership roles and professional practices. So I am Candace Young. I am an academic OTA program director at Kaiser University, and I'll be happy to share my story with you. So a little bit about myself. I come from a small town in Mississippi, just a few miles away from New Orleans. In my childhood, I always had dreams of achieving greatness, especially coming from a small town. My father, he worked as a carpenter, and my mother, she works as a computer engineer, as a Black woman. And at that time when I was younger, I remember looking up to her because she used to go around the globe, leaving, of course, me and my father in our small town to, pursue her dreams. So even in my youth, I actually wondered why she pursued such remarkable achievements, especially as a Black woman, because I knew even back then that it would pose a lot of challenges for us. And as I got older, I understood that the achievements that she had and that she reached for, it wasn't out of our reach. So I was always told that growing up to always reach for the things that we felt that were impossible. So, fast forward a few years later, I went on to pursue my career in college, of course. I felt like I was a career student in college. My mom wanted me to follow in her footsteps, but it's not something that I actually wanted to do. So like many other adults, I looked at a journey of self-discovery and different career options that were familiar, like nursing. And so one day I actually fell upon occupational therapy, which actually crossed my path in 2004. In that, OT, like for many of us, it was new. So after that attempt to get into nursing school and be waitlisted, I actually found myself, falling for OT. And a admissions counselor came up to me, and the way she, approached me is, "Do you like crafts?" And I'm like, "Oh, now we know that, OT is not just about crafts, right? That's our foundation." So my youthful enthusiasm actually led me to say yes, because I did dabble a little bit in leisure and sketching and things of that nature. And that's where I actually met my first mentor. She was my OTA PD. She told me a little bit more about OT. And once I actually got into the program, I knew that's actually where I belonged. So, after I began my journey, I worked in a skilled nursing facility after I graduated for about 10 years. I dabbled in a little bit of rehab management duties, but I wasn't the rehab director. And over the course of those 10 years, I looked at the different intricacies of rehabilitation, but I felt at some point that I felt stagnant. So I tried to pursue other things like different credentials added on to the CODA role, and also going back to school to get my bachelor's and my master's and now my postmaster's. So now I'm actually working on my dissertation right now, currently in my doctoral degree. And, so I did go back and I did different certifications in management and lymphedema management and kinesiotaping. And at that time, still, I felt unsure of my path. Since I was always taught to keep striving for more, I needed to feel like I needed to gain clarity. So what I did is I started mentoring OTA students from one of our local universities, and their feedback always pointed towards being a teacher. And initially, I was shy and I was like, yeah, I can't be a teacher. I don't like speaking in front of people. So I kind of ignored it. And so feeling still unfulfilled at my role at a SNF, I actually went on to have other opportunities. So I transitioned to a lymphedema outpatient clinic where I felt like I found a renewed purpose. So I started taking interns there, and then I started to progress. And of course, the unpredictable nature of different clinic schedules and the reliant of patient flow and set hours still, at some point felt me financially insecure. So one more time, as I was taking students, I was approached by one of my interns and the academic fieldwork coordinator to teach. And so I actually overcame my reservations and I actually went for it, and I took a leap of faith. And then I fully, embraced that full-time faculty position as an OTA program instructor in 2018. And of course, during the pandemic, I transitioned to the program director for that particular program. So this also led to different types of possibilities in clinical practice, despite, juggling the different roles that I had in the as a mother, as a mentor in the community. I remained deeply engaged in the profession in different organizations such as AOTA. I became an accreditation evaluator. I began writing articles, trying to get them published. And then I started to meet more people and found out about different organizations for people that look like me, So I joined the South Florida, SFBOTC. And then, I just continued to mentor, my students. So there were a few key moments that I truly enjoyed, and I can actually look back on life and, really embrace, So as I progressed through my journey, I couldn't help but actually think about the journey that my mom went through and my dad's relentless work ethic. And as I got older, and I got married, I started to lean on my husband for support. So being having him as a support, we started to engage in our local community. So frequently he would introduce me to different community partners, local leaders, and people who exuberated Black excellence at local events. And from there on, my passion ignited even more to grow as a coda. So by immersing myself in the company of the different community leaders, I would sit back and absorb their every move, their speech, their mannerisms. And even though I'm really quiet, I actually started to soak up that Black excellence that was surrounding me. And I was like, I can do this. I can be them. I can be where they are. So when I finally summoned the courage to actually speak up, doors began to open for me. I found myself speaking at different church events, more focused on topics with health and well-being and prevention. So I started to expand my reach in sharing the different insights on occupational therapy and lymphedema prevention and management at local conferences that was held by like different community ministries. And where I hold a healthcare leader role at, because I'm actually a part of those ministries where I would reach out to the community and spread the news of healthcare. I even had the honor of also, being guest speakers at MSOT programs, offering guidance to their aspiring therapists. Of course, other key moments I cannot forget is my patients. So witnessing the progression of my clients left me with joy. It made me feel like I was on the right path. And of course, along the way, I've been fortunate to encounter supportive colleagues and a network of people through AOTA, leadership, other leadership roles, and of course, my first OTA PD, which guided me and still do to this day, working alongside her, where I once was a student. So it's like actually a full circle. I started at the university as a student, and now I'm a program director at the university. So while looking and discovering like those valuable resources along the way, it's been really, truly eye-opening and humbling. And at this point, I'm able to share this with my students, people that I mentor, and also anyone that can actually benefit. I'll always try to spread that news of occupational therapy. So, when I look at the strategies of how to achieve excellence, or for how I can assist other people in achieving excellence, I always mention education and training. This is something that I do on a day-to-day basis when I'm speaking to my students, making sure they continue to seek, the education that follows their passion, whether it's through taking the extra CEUs or courses at other universities or colleges. Mentorship, maybe find somebody to mentor them or mentor someone else. And if you're like me and you can't find someone that, can mentor you personally, you can also admire the leadership from afar and kind of steer yourself in the right direction that you choose. Another thing is advocacy and representation. I would say about this is advocating and representation in occupational therapy among Black clinicians and Black patients involve addressing systematic inequities, promoting culturally responsive care, and empowering the individuals and communities to advocate for the rights and their well-being. When we're seeing our clients and when we're out there speaking and engaging in the community. So that means speaking up and amplifying our voices. I've found my voice a little bit more as I got older and then got more diverse in the community and also in my profession. And also making sure that our clients that we're seeing, that their concerns and preferences are heard and also respected. Providing the education in the Black community, just like I mentioned before, fostering awareness, And also collaborating with different community leaders can also help you achieve excellence. Advocating for cultural competency and anti-racist approaches to occupational therapy on a day-to-day basis. Also community engagement, get involved, find opportunities to speak up about the benefits of OT. And this doesn't have to be on a big platform. This can also be on a smaller platform as well. Most of the platforms that I've been on, they've been smaller platforms, but they also have given me the opportunity to get the word out about occupational therapy and what we can do and to decrease these healthcare disparities in the Black community. Professional development and leadership development. Again, find opportunities to express yourself, taking a leap of faith to yourself, for yourself to get out there. Although you may feel uncomfortable at times, I found myself that making myself uncomfortable has led me where I am today. And of course, self-care and wellness, taking the time for yourself. I'm still learning this, taking the time to myself to master the goals that I want to accomplish. I'm realizing now that everything doesn't have to come at once. This is also a part of a continuous reflection on yourself. So recognition where I want to be and allow a manageable time to accomplish my goals and my professional goals. And of course, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. That's another thing that I would actually recommend. So while we embrace excellence, especially as an occupational therapy assistant, for me, it involves recognizing and celebrating your cultural identity while striving for excellence in professional practices. Also, we can achieve this by positively impacting the lives of Black individuals and communities, while also contributing to advancement of the diversity of the occupational therapy profession. So the advice that I would give is to make sure you're taking cultural pride in what we do as a Black professional, advocating for our patients, making sure you're have excellence in your practice. Despite the things that go on, when I go to work, I leave it all behind to give 100% each time. That way, I feel like I'm doing my due diligence to my students, to the people that I mentor. And also it makes me feel good to always give that 100%, knowing that there were really no obstacles, no personal obstacles in the way at that time. Giving back and doing mentorship and of course, advocacy, empowerment, community engagement. And the one biggest thing is I can say is on your journey, loving where you are now. I know that can be hard because we always want to achieve or look at the end goal, but if you love the journey that you're in, it'll mean so much more once you actually achieve it. All right, and I think that is it. And I put my contact information if anyone wants to contact me. I really appreciate the opportunity and thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Young, especially as an occupational therapy assistant myself. Thank you so much for your presentation. With that, we'll move into a 5 to 7 minute Q&A session. With that, please, if you have any questions for Ms. Young, please put them inside the chat. But I'll ask the first question. So Ms. Young, in your opinion, what attributes have helped you navigate your different spaces in your career?
What attributes have helped me navigate? I feel as if what attributes that I have, I feel that my professionalism, I try to be open-minded with my opportunities. I go in with an open mind despite the situation, the environment, and I tackle it head on. I try not to let things or people get in my head about the goals that I want to achieve. So I kind of just stay straightforward. And that has actually helped me. Once you block everything out of the way, it can help you reach your goals and make you, and also humble you at the same time, well, in the direction of your goals.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you. All right, so here's our second question, Ms. Young. So reflecting on your advocacy and engagement efforts, has a code switching ever manifested in your advocacy of everyday work? And particularly when addressing different demographic groups?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question, actually. So to be honest, I do not like code switching. I try to be myself. And that's one of the things I tell my students when I'm with my students each day. They see the real me. I don't sugarcoat anything, despite the race of my students. And I think that also allows the students to trust me, but it's the demographics that I teach. But no, I don't, I don't code switch at all. I don't prefer it. I try to keep it real as much as possible.
Gotcha, Candace. Thank you. Okay. And the questions are coming in. So another one, with all of your degrees, why have you remained an OTA? And what message do you share with OTAs who are considering becoming an OT?
So with all of my degrees, when I look at all of my degrees, at one point I was trying to figure out how would they all make sense. I know that we're all on our own journey and our own path. And for a minute, I was like, what am I still doing being an OTA clinician? And to be honest, it's my passion. If you ever speak with any of my students, they will say, Miss Young loves OT, and I truly, truly do. So that's why I stay in the field. I chose education because as my postmaster's degree and my doctoral, working towards my doctoral degree, because I not only love teaching, I love educating OT. So, that's one of the things I just truly love it. It's my passion. I couldn't see myself doing anything else but teaching OT in some aspect and getting the word out there in the community or with students or, whatever it may be.
Gotcha. I love it. I love the passion for occupational therapy. That's beautiful, beautiful. So, Candace, maybe you can kind of share with us a little bit. Do you feel that you're still using those OTA skills in regards to overall, you've now gotten these advanced degrees. Are you still using that skill set? Because that's one of the things we obtain degrees and sometimes we go, I'm kind of transitioning. Do you still feel at heart you're an occupational therapy practitioner?
Of course I do. I'm still in the clinic on the weekends.
Okay.
Yes, in the weekends I work in a lymphedema clinic, where that's also my other passion, where I love OT. But yes, I'm still in a clinic. I still work out there, and so I still put it to good use. I don't plan on hanging it up and just teaching. So I love still being in a clinic. It's like one of those things, like you like educating, you like OT. It actually kind of goes hand in hand because we're educating our clients, we're educating our students. So it's hand in hand. So yes, I'm still in the clinic.
Okay. All right, you have another question here. It says, are there any resources you found beneficial with transitioning from the clinic to academic setting?
Any resources, if that's something that you want to do, I would always advise to take on students if you have the opportunity to do so. I took on students for 5 or 6 years while I was in the clinic itself. And like I mentioned, I didn't know how I would be able to handle a classroom full of students, because one I felt was a lot, but that actually helped me transition. It got me out there and start speaking up and advocating a little bit more for my clients. So even when I'm in the even when I'm in the classroom, I'm still advocating for clients because I teach my students, advocate for your client. What is the best way to approach your client? We always discuss different the client's race, how would you approach this if this is what they're asking? I use different type of resources. AOTA has a lot of good resources too, that I do share with my students that are not of color. And I tell them straight up, this is what you may have to deal with. But yes, if you want to go and do that transition, take on students, see if you like it, and then, maybe think about, doing that, going into academics. I encourage it 100%.
Thank you so much, Candace, for your responses and giving the audience a rich presentation. And thank you so much for sharing. And with that, we're going to transition now to our next presenter. So thank you so much, Candace.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we have our next speaker, which will be Dr. Armstead.